Many schools still see students who speak multiple languages as lacking English rather than having extra skills. Why do you think this mindset is still common?
The first thing I can point to is that despite the presence of other languages in our community, society, the policies have limited language use to English. And that has roots going way back in the history of the United States, post-settlement, obviously. And these policies help maintain that status quo. They help maintain that idea that there should only be one language and that that language should be English. The reasons for those policies have changed somewhat over time, but they are rooted in assimilation, the idea that we all need to be the same. And Teddy Roosevelt was one of the first politicians to put that in writing in a way that sought to unify this idea that, oh, if we don't speak the same languages, we somehow won't be as unified. And so it's really hard to try and change something that has been that focal in policy. That led the way for all of the education policies that we see, the English-only policies. These policies reflect the idea, really outdated ideas about how our brains work, about how we learn languages and how we speak languages. The idea, unfortunately, is that if we use other languages, it will somehow limit or inhibit our learning and our use of English, when actually the research tells us the opposite. It tells us that the more skills we have with other languages and the more we're allowed to use those other languages as we learn English, the better we're going to do. And that's even tied to academic outcomes. So not only can we acknowledge, wow, this is really amazing, the students in my class speak all of these different languages, we also can know as the educators, speaking those languages can help them learn English. So not only do we need to value and appreciate the languages, we need to say, hey, let's leverage these other languages in helping our students learn English. And that's, I think, a really fundamental shift that has to happen.
Thank you so much. It brings me to the next question. What are some practical ways teachers can treat students' home languages as strengths instead of ignoring them?
Wonderful question. This is something I think about often, and I work with K-12 teachers and I work with future teachers here. And we're thinking about this all of the time. What does it look like for a student to come into a learning environment and know they can speak other languages? What shows somebody when they come into a place, I can use my home languages? And I ask teachers that because I want them thinking, what signals can you give a student? So one of the places we start with is fundamental is, what do you know about that language? What do you know how to say in that language? I have so many examples of times when all I did was look up how to have a greeting in another language, and the look on a parent's face when they walk into a school and I greet them in their language is shock, and then a smile. And it's all I did was look up hello in Marshallese, and now I know how to say it, Yagwe. So you can start there and build, but we do know that creating the environment where we know other languages are safe to be used, students can be comfortable speaking their language and using all of the resources that come with that. I will connect back to policy again because it's something I think is really important. We have to also remember that using other languages is a civil right. We can't actually, in public spaces, deny somebody the ability to speak other languages because that's a violation of civil rights. So at a fundamental level, we have to do it. But as I mentioned, we need to do it because of all of the things it opens up for us as teachers when we are trying to support our students' learning. But I also think we need to go a little bit further and say, all right, I know this student speaks French, for example. What do I know? What can I look up or read about the French language that will help me understand this student who's learning English, how they're thinking about it. Okay, here's something. I know in French, this letter is pronounced in this way. And I notice, wow, the student is really struggling to pronounce this word in English. And I'm like, I remember in French that letter makes a different sound. I need to then take a little bit of what I know about that language and say, hey kiddo, this is how you make this sound. Right? So there's learning how to make a greeting, how to ask a question, these things in another language, but then also our metalinguistic awareness of how that language works so that we can help the student use that in their learning.
Do you think schools and testing systems make it harder to see multilingualism as an asset?
That's a really important question, and it's a conversation that needs to be continued. In the United States, we're in an era of standardized education. Since 2001 and the No Child Left Behind Act, our public school system has been standardized to the extent that schools cannot avoid standardized assessment because everything is connected to it. School funding is now inextricably linked to assessment outcomes. And what No Child Left Behind did was also to say, well, if these schools don't have these outcomes on assessments, we are going to withhold or withdraw funding. And so now schools have this pressure. That saying, and I'm going to borrow words from an educator from Seattle, this idea that when a student is struggling and you see them in the corner and maybe they're shivering because they're really, really cold, you don't go to that child and take their temperature. You give them a blanket. But standardized assessment, the constant standardized assessment is, let's assess. What are the assessment scores? Instead of saying, what does that child need in this moment? And so I think it's unavoidable for educators to use assessments and standardized assessments. It's a part of our school system. What we have to consider as to the question of students who speak other languages and to our multilingual students is that these assessments are almost entirely in English all the time. So a wonderful scholar, Kate Mencken, this was before 2010 even, made this connection between if a required assessment is in English, it is therefore an English assessment. And that is therefore now a policy. They've made English assessments a policy, right? So you can see the way that all of the aspects of the system support the preeminence of English. Anything standardized, even if it's designed to bring all students up to the same level, that was why No Child Left Behind Act was called that, right? And it's such a good idea. Of course we don't want to leave any child behind. But we also know no two children are the same. So it's a really complex thing to consider. I think that's why folks tend to avoid conversations around assessment, because it's complex and it's become this thing like, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. We can't change it. And so, but we also know who does it impact the most. It impacts our marginalized communities the most, because those are the students who do not perform as well on standardized assessment. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you'd like to want the audience to know or the public to know?
I think that one of the best things that ever happened to me was coming to this career of education where I work with multilingual learners. It has allowed me in a professional capacity to meet people, learn languages, hear and see the experiences of people whose experiences are so different than my own, and that perspective is invaluable. And so to people who are worried or fearful of, oh, but if students are using their other languages, I'm not going to know what they're saying. Well, great, but now you get to know them and you can learn more about a language And so if we can not only see that other languages are a beautiful, rich resource for us, but an opportunity for us also to learn, that would be great.